This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let me go through what we had. I think one big thing is I've shared a topic for this. We'd like to see if there's any interest in doing a bunch of papers at the OCP Regional Summit in Amsterdam. I'm going to save this. Charter will save for later. I've got a discussion going with Bill Chen from ASC on packaging, and hopefully sometime next week he's going to we'll close a loop with him. All right, so let me hit the OCP Amsterdam summit first. Does anybody have any interest in submitting papers for this? The idea is that maybe can we get something enough done for a half-day session? Any interest? Any takers? Can everybody volunteer at once? Brian, did you have any thoughts on this?
Hey, Boppy, it's Sparks.
Sorry? Is anyone saying anything, or did I just lose everyone?
No, I can hear you, Boppy.
Okay, there's an awfully quiet meeting today. All right.
When you're asking volunteers, people tend to be quiet.
I suppose.
You missed the sound of us all taking a step back. Yeah.
I see. Okay. All right. We've got our old reliables, the work groups. Maybe the right way to phrase it is, what items are the work group leaders going to present at Amsterdam? Maybe that's the way to phrase this.
Oh, that was tricky. Yeah, good one.
I
guess what's the Amsterdam thing is new to me. What's the focus?
You weren't here last week. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yep.
So, right. Okay. So the OCP is going to do a fairly big regional summit in Amsterdam. It's kind of, they have an annual global conference here in March in the Bay Area. And there's a reasonably big regional summit in Amsterdam. So Archana went through this last week, and we're trying to figure out whether it's worth, whether there's enough interest and interest and content to put together a half-day session at the OCP, at the European Summit.
So right. You're envisioning something much like what we do at the quarterly workshops.
Yeah, I mean, probably more, and probably way more information than discussion. My expectation is our workshops are sort of, there's actually discussion that goes on back and forth in the lead up. This one's more like a, okay, here's what we're doing. I hope more of you join us.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so each of our groups would. I mean, who can resist a trip to Amsterdam in the fall? So think about that. I think we could do a half-day session if we just did like an update on where we are and what we've done so far and what our goals are. I think the trick question is there any interest in doing this? I think there's sufficient motivation for the group. Now the question is, does it align with where the individual companies are and where all of you are aligned with your own work schedule?
Yeah, and I guess I'm trying to think about, I guess maybe we just don't know about European interest because we've been mainly US based for
right
for the last year.
Yeah. So I think Brian was thinking in terms of a half-day schedule, which seems to make sense given where we are. And we've got this to me is our significant everything. We've got an overview. We've got decent analog work, the bunch of wires interface, POC work, and business and workflow. And if you're looking at around 30 minutes, which is a typical thing, you can see like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 2.5 hour session coming together. So this would be Greg, and this would be Mark and Ramin, and this would be what happens when you don't volunteer voluntarily. You get volunteer. I tried to be nice.
It's fun signing up everyone for these sessions, but I know it's in September and all, but would folks be able to fly out for
Yeah,
such?
jokes aside. Anyway, this is what it would look like. I mean, anybody else is obviously, if anyone else is interested in presenting, discussing things, would more than love to have you do something. But this is the sort of bare bones outline.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I imagine everybody who's on your list already would have to go figure out whether that works from a schedule point of view.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Schedule's the big question.
Well, yeah. So I think this is the.
Well, I know. So is there? I'm sure Aaron would probably be there. Should we assign something to Aaron?
I'm always in favor of sending something to someone. So yeah.
What would make the most sense?
Well, I think then having him do some of the overview where we equip him, Aaron and DJ do some of the overview wouldn't be a bad thing.
Oh, that's right. DJ's kind of taken over some of that stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So we can tentatively pencil them in, and I can pencil myself out.
Oh, Boppy, you can't do that.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
It would be good to have Aaron kind of introduce how it makes sense to dovetail ODSA and OCP.
Yeah. So that's a good idea, Brian. We can ping them, and I like that. Alex, Reza, do you guys want to say anything, to add anything to the agenda? You have any interest in participating?
I have to check for the availability of the group, but we definitely, I'm thinking we might be interested, but I have to check, Bobby.
Okay, no worries. Nick, you have any thoughts on the business and workflow side that you think you might want to say something at the regional summit, or too early? Okay. All right. Okay, so Brian, anything else we want to expand on? This is good enough for this week.
No, I think that's good enough, because then just getting the agenda set up is good. Now, the submissions close, I believe, on the 24th, so we kind of have to package everything together. We're going to have to ask maybe Archana if we should submit everything directly onto the site, or do we just provide it to them and they have it? And I think we need to figure out what their preferred mode is here.
Oh, do we organize a session, or do they organize a session? Is basically what you're asking, right?
Yeah, I mean, we provide them all the information, they have it. Does it actually need to go through a system that essentially gets lost and gets sent to someone else who doesn't really know the overall arching plan here?
Yeah.
Let me send an email to them and
Okay.
see what would be preferred.
Okay. All right. I think I'll follow up with Aaron and DJ, and Greg and Mark. You guys look at your schedules and see what you think. And Quinn and Jawad, same thing, I guess, right?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I think you should, personally, I would position this as a hardship, a trip to Amsterdam in the fall, but how you do it is up to you. All right. Then I want to have a quick discussion. So we've had like a really fortunate thing. three really interesting topics show up at the same time for next week's meeting. So I'd really like to make sure that once we invite guests, we have people who can stay. The only way I can see to fit all this in is to extend it for 90 minutes. So so the three topics are, oh God, let me close that. I'm sorry. The three topics we have in flight are, Mark has invited someone from Cadence to do a walkthrough on the MCM flow. I've got a speaker from ARM who will talk about a lightweight link layer. And David Calet from Intel wants to talk about the AIB. This is the best slot for him. Yeah, I think it's unreasonable to ask them to sort of compress it into 15-minute or 20-minute talks. So I'd like to give each speaker about 30 minutes. Can everyone who's on the call please make some time next week to stay an extra 30 minutes?
I can do, no problem.
Good. I mean, is there anybody who can't?
I don't know if I can. This is Quinn, because the CXL tutorials and workshops are next Friday as well.
At what time?
They're supposed to start 8 in the morning, but I haven't seen the detailed agenda yet to who's talking.
Oh, then I wonder how. Okay. Should we start earlier instead of going till 9:30?
That would be better for me.
I can work with that.
It's pretty darn early for you folks on the West Coast, though.
So maybe Quinn, can you do earlier if we start earlier?
I can do earlier is easier for me.
Okay, so let me start the meeting at 7:30 next Friday then, and I'll make sure that it gets updated. Okay.
Bobby, this is JP.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one comment. Is it possible? I mean, all the three presentations you're talking about arranging are pretty interesting and relevant for our work. Yeah. I'm very interested, but is it possible to split into two weeks? Because it's maybe it's interesting, but difficult to absorb all in one go.
Yeah, it is, and what I'm hoping is that this is just the first of sort of a longer engagement with especially with ARM, actually with all three, and we're running into June. May is a tricky scheduling month. That was my first preference. It's just proving to be really hard.
Oh, okay.
So because after this we have somebody from ASC that I'd like to have talk, and then we're thinking of there's a whole bunch of people that we can learn from.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for arranging all this. It's all very interesting topics.
Yeah. Mark gets Cadence, and it's so shall I start at 7:30 then?
Yeah, it works for me actually. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's good. We might actually finish early today at this rate. All right. Let me see. Yeah. Was there anything else? Right. Jawad?
Yes, Bobby.
Would you like to do your deck? Would you like to do your deck on the new open standard you have in mind?
Sure.
Okay. So Jawad, as a note, I'm going to make you presenter.
Okay.
It's all yours.
Okay. So let me know if you can't see the deck. So we have been thinking about putting together some kind of a proposal for a standard on design information exchange for Chiplet. So we have some experience at zGlue in doing some of this work, and It's a big topic. I will only try to just introduce the concept and get some feedback. So what's the benefit of kind of like standardization? We do understand today if we have to choose components, there's a lot of interesting work that engineers do. We look at product briefs, we look at data sheets, we look at reference designs, and then manually build a bunch of uh, follow-on products. One of the things is that when we come to this particular space of accelerators, getting your hands on the parts is not an easy thing. And what we are learning in this POC exercise right now, that it's been quite some time since all of us are actually trying to put the NDAs together, right? So an NDA is just one of the many things, right? So there's a certain amount of barrier to entry in this market. And one of the things that can help create a market is if there is a easier way for people to address their legal concerns and address their business concerns, yet more effectively they are able to exchange information with each other. So we can think of, let's say, okay, make the standard for the data sheets and everyone prints a PDF according to same standards. That's a really difficult thing to do. What we have learned at zGlue is we've kind of like built a format which is very simple. It's text-based format. If you are familiar with, say, spice models, it's kind of like that you define a number of parameters and you say, okay, this parameter, this name means the following. And these are the units that you are going to use. So literally what the proposal that we have here starts from that. It basically says, okay, let's start with a simple text-based representation of chiplets. And we can then debate about it and maybe start with a level 1 proposal and then leave some margin into it that it can be expanded to other areas. Now, what happens is, if you there are really good design tools available out there. One of the challenges with these design tools is depending upon the company or the project, there are you mix and match tools that originated either in silicon design or in PCB design, and there are tons of challenges on interoperability of those tools. So if we start taking some simple steps along the line, it will help not only creating a marketplace, but it will also help with the design tool being able to exchange data with each other. So, in a way, I've already described all these points, but a few things to keep in mind. So let's imagine that we are able to define a standard, a very simple standard, which basically says, okay, what is the mechanical information of a particular chiplet, and what is the I/O information of a chiplet. So for and once you have that thing defined, there's the opportunity to kind of automate it. There's an opportunity to exchange that data through web APIs and things of that nature. In fact, if you look at this company called Ultra Librarian, they do provide I/O bump maps, which is one piece of information for open source chips, right? So, but they have a particular format, and PCB designers have to be familiar with it. But they have been providing very valuable service for the PCB designers in general. And I think if we can put some proposal out there right now, we may be able to help the automation companies automate these things in a way that can be easily exchanged. So that essentially is the high-level idea, and we may eventually be able to figure out ways where we can um, incorporate some kind of a authentication mechanism with these, which essentially allows parties who have NDAs with each other to access information. But that's kind of the long term. It's really just a starting step based on our experience. I'll give you guys a bit of an overview today. So if we are making a PCB today, this is how we represent a chip. What we do is we have product briefs, data sheets, reference designs, IDIS models. Maybe somebody will give you thermal models. It's possible you may get something more than that, but this is generally what gets shared around. And when we do the POC work, this is how we are trying to represent the chiplet today, right? It's really no different, right? So one of the things is when you start with this particular starting point, you invariably will end up using PCB type of tools, and PCB type of tools have they work well with one type of substrate. They may not work well with the other kind. So that's where, if once you start looking into details of offering from these big three EDA companies, you will notice that it's a lot of mix and match and a lot of training that's needed to cobble things together. And our exercise might even help those guys too. So I'm just gonna take a quick break from this presentation and give you guys a very quick demonstration. So this is a public domain tool that zGlue makes available to our beta testers. And it's essentially a tool to build designs with chiplets. And I'll just give you a very brief example of one thing. So for example, I selected a component. This particular component is a chip from Nordic Semiconductor with a bunch of IOs. And I will take one more thing, which is something really, really simple. Maybe and put that together, and I can put a bunch of things in here, but just a second. If we look at the netlist that's being generated behind the scene, you will notice that it's really just very simple text-based representation of these components. That is, we actually decided to, in a way, let people look at it. So it's kind of out there, and people can just view. Good thing is all these chips that we have our library right now, these chiplets, they are otherwise also available through Ultra Librarian or through DigiKeys and distributors. So this gave us a easier way to get started. We can do many other things with this one. We can actually go into creating schematics. We can go into routing this thing. We have a little router, and we actually have a full 3D representation of this thing to essentially see like what's happening, and we can then from here onwards download the information in the form of, let's say, Spice netlists that go into other simulator tools for signal integrity, power integrity. There is a step file download, which is for mechanical thermal simulations. So we've been using this tool for our development, and we mostly wrote all of this functionality grounds up. So I'll stop this demonstration. We can come back to it some other day if there is interest, and I can show you more detail. capabilities of this tool. But coming back to the original topic, which is what is it that we can start with? So here is our proposal, that we basically put together a very simple standard of some kind. We can start with our proposal that just says, okay, if there is a chiplet, this is how you represent its mechanical properties, and this is how you represent its I/O properties and its power profile, and this list can go on if there is interest. So I'll just briefly introduce the concept for mechanical format. So if you have a chiplet, it's basically a three-dimensional figure with an X, Y, and Z, and literally, as a very first step, you would say, okay, there's a X value and there is a Y value and that there is a Z value. That should be enough for us to get the design done. And that's actually a good starting point, right? So it turns out that to do some very simple design, you need a lot more than that. Some of those things could be very simplistic and some are more complicated. So bear with me in reading these terms down here. What I'm proposing that we say that the standard format is just comma separated variable format, and OCP will standardize variable name. So all what we do is we basically say, okay, this is our mechanical format, and these will be provided in CSV, and here is an example. And here is the definition of each of these fields. This is the definition that we are writing, and we just put it out there. People will then take and might make variations of it, but it will give everyone a starting point. So let's read this one. If you come from the PCB design, you will actually understand it. So reference basically represents some kind of a reference that you have it in library. A certain value, manufacturer's part number, order number. Container is like comes in tape and reel or trays or whatever. How many units come in one package, and then the type of the package, and there is a thing called IPC code to go with the package. It's compatibility with the SMT and the reflow profiles. It's X value, but there's an important thing. So that is usually not sufficient. You also need to understand the tolerances. So when they use mechanical saws to saw these into or singulate these parts into individual units, tolerances are usually not as great as what silicon engineers are used to. So this mechanical information of X, Y, and their Z and their tolerances is kind of important. You also want to know how many IOs, what kind of bump pitch is there, what is the diameter of these, what is the thickness. Thickness means it's Z height thickness, and tolerances. Then you want to understand the material of the solder and the material of the mold, and then also reflow profiles. These are kind of like the bare minimum things that we use in our design today, which is it kind of allows us to do very first level mechanical checks on if the assembly that we are putting together will actually yield. It turns out that these tolerances are actually important because that's how your design rules work. There are a number of packaging related issues that people have to worry about. So all what I'm saying is we can come up with a standard list of variable names and agree on it, and we can publish it through OCP. So this basically allows people to do placement. So if you are familiar with place and route, this is the very first step. You pick the part, just like I was showing you from my library. I picked the part, and I'm able to pack things together on a given canvas during design entry. Along the same lines, the next important and kind of like the bare minimum is how do you define IOs? And this is what will expand. I mean, this is important for the electrical engineering design and schematics and all of that. So for the IO, the chiplets that we are talking about, that may be 2,000 pins, 3,000 pins, something like that. So once this format expands, there will be a lot of information contained in here. And this is actually, Ultra Librarian only provides a small portion of it, not all of this. So this is, IO formatting is kind of like a critical piece. So I took a subset and put that here, and we read. I'm basically describing 3 pins of a particular package. So A3, B2, C1, they're particular pins. Each pin has a particular name. It has an associated signal type. So this will be kind of like an overloaded vector where we can decide, okay, what different signal types, how do they get represented? We have, I can include that in the proposal. What kind of mechanical thing it is? Is it a solder ball? Is it a copper lamp pattern? So as we progress along, there might be more things in there. So that's really what it says. What is its diameter? And with respect to a certain origin, and that's actually a very interesting thing. You know, we have to figure out where do we want to put the origin. Is it like exact dead center of the chip, or are we going to describe some kind of a marker and describe it with respect to that? Now, the XY essentially tells you the mechanical location of that particular pin, which is a circle within a big rectangle. That's kind of what we have right now. So it turns out that you can use more fields than this one, and I will someday go through the detailed list that follows, which in a way describes all these properties, but have other things, like it will say, okay, for this particular ball, what is the maximum VDD? What are the abs max, mins and maxes, and what is its VDD? What is its current at a particular condition? What are the allowed termination resistors and capacitors? So things that are kind of captured for the what's allowed and recommended to put outside of it. And then do you need to put control with bleedance here? What type of ESD type is there? These things kind of start becoming important when you go into high frequency designs, which SerDes is one of those. So I'll just stop right here. And I have 2 questions. It's like, how do we make progress on it? What is the mechanism from OCP? And where should we put a document together and put it somewhere and let people comment on it? And I guess the first level question, do we even care, right? Is this something that folks think is worth spending time on? So Bobby, I am done.
Thank you. This is pretty good. I've got a number of thoughts, but I'm hoping someone else will step in and not have me monopolize the airtime. So in just one quick one, in terms of a mechanism, I think this will be, if we do a standard, we'll have to do something where something very similar to the bunch of wire specification, which is we'll have to kick off a joint development agreement, and the companies that want to work with all the companies that want to work together on the spec will join you in that JDA, and you can start putting out documents as a part of that effort. That's the sort of the standard OCP mechanism for this. And once we create a scope for the spec, drafting a JDA is a relatively straightforward process. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I can work with you on a scope for the spec, and then we put that out. And I think the more interesting question is, how do we get fellow travelers on this? Maybe Alex, if you're still with us, since you're in the, I mean, you guys are definitely thinking chiplets. What do you think about supporting something like this? Oh, okay. So I'm sure Alex active, but no. Okay. Anybody else have something to say? JP, Reza?
Yes, yeah. Bobby, I have some comments on this.
Fire away.
Hello, Bobby, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have some comments on this, so can I go ahead?
Of course, please.
Yeah. So thank you, Javed. This is excellent. This is something I was kind of talked to Bobby earlier. If something would have been nicer, but great to see you put together with such a great detail. This, I think, is like a way to go. Probably it needs more discussions, maybe perhaps face to face. But this will simplify a lot. I mean, not only applicable for chiplets, but also even for PCB. Something like this would bring great value for automation. Right? I have some thoughts about hierarchical designs, like you're combining constraints and then IOs and stuff. I think probably we'll take up some other time, maybe a face-to-face meeting to do a brainstorming on that.
Great.
What do you recommend? Do you think we should do a session at the June workshop just devoted to this?
I think this will definitely open up a lot of interest. I think it's a good idea to have it a separate, workshop topic. So if you have, so just to comment on same lines that Javed was talking about, the chiplet, unlike PCBs, we are talking about many IOs, like 3,000 or even 5,000, 6,000 bumps, right? It's not possible to connect them all manually, even if you have very low code or something, right? You need a lot more automation to wire these bumps together. And something like this is definitely required. And it'd be a great topic to have it in the workshop.
Now, do you think you can get someone at Cisco to review this, or would you be the right person at Cisco to review this? That in terms of just getting, even if they don't comment formally, how do we get more fellow travelers, people providing input saying, yeah, this is heading in the right direction?
I'll actually socialize this idea with some of the package design people who work on package designs.
Okay. Sorry, somebody else is speaking too. Sorry. Thanks. No, I think I heard someone else trying to say something. That's all.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
This is Mark. I have a question, maybe open to the group. How are we thinking about this and IP protection? Right. Some people might have a sensitivity about specific bump patterns and things like that. Are we envisioning that this would become an open ecosystem that anybody could access, and companies might be reticent to share all that information? Or are we viewing this as more of a standalone tool where you might have NDAs to get access to those C4 bumps and use that information to build your system?
So I was thinking that they're two separate but related problems. Problem number one is agreeing on a standard way to describe things so that you can input it to a tool. And problem number two is how widely does this information get disseminated? That you'll have an open standard, but maybe closed descriptions as a possible outcome.
Right. Maybe something we should think about as part of the open standard is predicting what things might be sensitive whether there's maybe levels of how much information is available or something.
Yeah. I've heard this physical description problem from multiple people. I was pretty excited when Jawad volunteered to sort of share their internal spec as a start of an open standard. And if we classify open closed components of a physical description, okay. And Mark, I mean, you're a nice guy, so I'm assuming you'll find other people to review Jawad's proposal as well. JP is like, JP is turning out to be like seriously good at this too. So, Reza?
No, I mean, I love the concept, and the initial proposal looks great. It's I'm just maybe stepping too far to the next step to where the complications are.
Yeah, no, yeah. But I figured this, we're the right group to at least get a discussion started. Best I can tell, this really is an open thing.
Mm-hmm.
Reza, do you think you guys are also in the chiplet business? Do you think you can get your guys to take a look at this?
We can, but what we are usually used to, I mean, this information is usually provided by the EDA companies that people usually use for PCB design and things like that. The challenge comes for providing this information readily when a chip is not really released or is in development, and still there is a lot of IP there, and that's sharing that information becomes really challenging. And you mentioned the JDA, and maybe have a limited number of people to look at this information in the beginning, or maybe have it stages that maybe at this stage certain group can look at, and at certain after that maybe goes to general public, or maybe just have different tiers. I don't know. Maybe that's what goes through my mind right now. But we also have interest to come up with some sort of a standard so we can look at other people's chiplets too. Yeah. So that's my comment.
Okay. Well, I think it's very important to draw the distinction between the standard and the actual information, and that everybody agreeing on the standard and the format to describe it as step one, and then how that information gets released is kind of step two.
Right.
I just think there may be some intersection where the standard should understand that there are sensitivities, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe that should be thought of in advance.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Almost like, do you have level 1, level 2, and level 3 amounts of information?
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, this is Reza, and you're on the same page on this. Yeah.
Right.
I'm just going to wing it here. All right. Anyone else have any thoughts on this? Brian?
No, not really. No.
Okay. Alex, you back with us? I keep saying. Okay. She's having audio trouble. All right. Sorry. Let me see. Okay. So Jawad, maybe the thing we can do is, I feel like this is a really big thing, and I've captured. Anything else you want me to capture on the notes here, Jawad?
We're not seeing your notes.
Oh, sorry. I've been sharing it. That's right. I lost it after. There. And I think we can get, if you get this document up, a proposal up, I'll get a JDA up with Archana, and we can get the ball rolling. And maybe start devote some solid time to this at our June workshop.
Sounds good.
Okay. So any work stream? I think Sam said he had to drop off.
Bobby,
Quinn,
can you hear me now?
Oh yes, Alex, go ahead, please.
Oh, finally. Sorry, I was trying like every connection method. That was strange. I didn't hear the last couple minutes, but I just wanted to comment on the the sharing of information and what's sensitive and what's not. Do you think it'd be useful to create a survey that we can send out to folks who would be chiplet providers to see what level of information they're comfortable with sharing publicly versus what they're only comfortable sharing, once they've established a partnership to co-package chiplets?
That's a nice idea.
I'd be happy to put that together.
Okay. There was and I'm not sure, that would be great. I think there's an easy mechanism when how information should be shared. Okay, I like that idea a lot.
If I could get that deck that was just presented, or I guess that'll be posted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, at first, gut feeling is, the level of information that would need to be shared publicly, would it just be the physical dimensions, kind of the X, Y, Z of the chiplet? Or like, Reza, what are your thoughts? Because I know you mentioned that it's sensitive to share a lot of this information. Is there anything that is less sensitive?
I guess the very top level is probably okay, but if you want to provide detailed information on as far as the thickness and things are concerned, there might be some hesitations there, I guess, on the chiplets.
So are you saying X, Y might be okay, but Z not?
Yeah, I would say.
That makes sense.
I guess Z is crucial, right? I mean, that's what separates chiplets from everything else.
The chiplets can be they can be thinned out, so we can give a range. But then a specific application, we can just thin it out to the height that we need to match the other chiplets.
That's true.
So just a comment. I mean, XYZ is kind of like the bare minimum, even for the placement, because keep in mind, this kind of design is really a three-dimensional mechanical design.
Sure.
So you need some value of Z, because that immediately determines if the mold chase that you are going to use behind the scene to put that black stuff on top, will
Sure.
that work, and things of that nature, because those things have serious cost implications, right?
Well, the other thing is if you have more than milliwatts of power, getting heat out matters, and if you have a mismatch in die thicknesses, it will be brutal on your theta JA.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, I think there are two problems to solve, right? One is just being able to list what chiplets are available, within ODSA, so that collaborations can begin. And then the second is, once there's an established interest in co-packaging a few of the chiplets together, feasibility needs to be determined, and that's where you need a lot more detailed information. So if we were to stage it, maybe all you need at first is functionality. Maybe you don't even need much. Maybe you don't even need the XY, just to figure out if there is interest in co-packaging a specific set of chiplets together. Once there's interest, then you establish the NDAs and you share a lot more.
You do. I think one thing we're missing is we really want these chiplets to be able to work together. And if we have these really wide buses, the only way chips get to talk to each other is if the pins on them line up extraordinarily well. That won't happen accidentally. If people are unwilling to share pin locations, there's not going to be a marketplace, and this whole effort is going nowhere.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, but I like these. No, I really like what everyone's saying. So
Greg, are
actually,
you saying?
Alex, maybe the way to ask it is, if you want to do a co-packaging, what kind of information do you need along with the functionality? Like, what kind of early information do you need to just judge whether it's worth a detailed look?
Yeah,
Yeah, as
that's
part
a
of the
good idea.
survey.
I think if you want to do packaging, the information that Jawad shared, those are all needed by the packaging engineers and everybody else.
Right. I think maybe in terms of talking about stage design, right? So usually you sort of do a first order filter and say, oh, I just need to do a first order judgment, and say, for a first order judgment, what kind of information would a typical designer need?
Right. So, Bappi, I think I like Mark's original idea of breaking it into level 1, level 2. So the level 1 can be like a product brief. So generally the information that people are comfortable sharing, which is just the number of IOs and XYZ to start with. And if there is more interest, get to level 1 that has pin locations and things of that nature. So maybe that would be a worthwhile effort to figure out. And I think Alex is saying the same thing, if I understand correctly.
Yeah. But we make it a practice never to agree with Mark, just so you know.
Thank you. It's nice to have one person agree every once in a while.
All right. So this is awesome. We're out of time. I have a hard stop. We do have 2 other interesting topics, but I think Jawad's given us a really wonderful topic here. So Jawad, we can work on a scope, get a JDA going, and then we can start shopping for fellow travelers. And if you have a first order document, we can start circulating it and make for a good session in the June workshop.
Sounds good.
Many thanks for doing this. And thank you for sharing your what you guys have been put together the hard way. Okay, I guess we'll come back to the charter the week after next, and maybe at the workshop as well. Any opens from anyone before? Let me just do a quick survey. Alex, Brian.
No.
No.
Okay. Greg, Jawad.
No.
No.
JP, Mark.
No, thank you.
Mark? Oh, you didn't say. You said nothing. Okay.
Oh, I said I'm good. Yep.
Okay. Nick, Philip.
I'm good.
Okay. Quinn, Reza.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. By way of updates, I think we have a POC working session this afternoon, and we're still on track to submit a couple of papers to Hot Interconnect. And if you need any information about any of these things, please drop me a line or anybody else. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Jawad, for your presentation.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.
Thank you.